So says the author of a new book, Limitarianism, The Case Against Extreme Wealth. She's not merely expressing an opinion, the author of that book. She's arguing for a new policy, a limit on how much wealth anyone can have. The author, Professor Ingrid Robeyns, joins us from Utrecht, where she's chair in the ethics of institutions at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And we're also joined by one of those billionaires she's targeting, John Caudwell, businessman who founded the mobile retail company Phones for You. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Well, let's begin with the why, shall we, Professor Robeyns? You say the case against extreme wealth. What is it?
Yes, so my argument is that there should be a cap or an upper limit on how much personal wealth any person can have. So basically the opposite of a poverty line. The poverty line, nobody can fall below it, or at least that's what we would want. In the case of limitarianism, a richest line, we would want nobody to have so much money as to go above a certain limit. And the reasons for this are multiple. I think I have about 7 or 8 reasons in my book. But an important one is that it's a wasteful allocation of resources, because we could use those resources above the richest line much better for addressing poverty and addressing public goods such as, say, the crumbling NHS. But also there are also risks to do with harms to society, such as that it might undermine democracy, or that it actually is negatively correlated with ecological sustainability.
Well, let's turn to John Caudwell then. You don't deserve the money, you don't need it, and it'd be better off, instead of you giving it to charity, John, and I know, having interviewed you about this in the past, you give a lot of money to charity, it'd be better off the government does it, because it will allocate it to the people who need it.
Yeah. Well, let me first say that as a humanitarian, I have to say that the poverty, the gap between rich and poor is obscene, and society needs to work at a solution for that. And we all want people to be better off at the bottom end of the scale, because there is abject poverty all around the world, and it's disastrous. That said, I've never heard such a load of nonsense and claptrap in my life. Now, I can go on to say why that is.
Oh, do. No, tell it, and then we'll bring Professor Robeyns back in. Why do you think a cap, and the suggested cap is 10 million, but I think the argument we'll hear is it doesn't really matter what the number is, there should be a cap. Why do you claim that's claptrap?
Why do I say that's claptrap?
Yes, John. Yeah.
Right. Well, firstly, it's an ideology that Ingrid has got that is absolutely, utterly impossible to put in. The only way of achieving that would be with a worldwide dictator that sets all the standards. And we all know what happens with dictators. They and the cronies become the world's richest, and the poor become poorer. It's just an ideological nonsense. But
well, let's get her to respond to that before you give us another reason. What do you say to that, Professor Robeyns?
No, yes. So I'm glad to have some debate on this. But actually, one of the arguments I give in favor of limitarianism is that currently wealth concentration is undermining democracy. So I think in order to restore democracy, because democracy is currently in danger in many countries around the world, we need to reduce inequalities. Now, let me also say that limitarianism is not a concrete policy proposal that I'm advocating to implement tomorrow, but I describe it in the book as a guiding ideal that should steer how we change society. And I think we both agree that we should make changes to society. And my proposal is that we reduce inequalities significantly, but from the top downwards, not
That's
just focusing on the poor.
Here's the interesting point, John, if I may. John, just put this to you. The interesting thing, you, along with a lot of very wealthy people, have publicly declared that a vast amount of your wealth will not go to your children, that you will give it away, as well as the money you already give to charity. Why not let government do that? Why not agree with Ingrid and say, look, if you don't need it, you give it away. Why not let them do it?
Let's come back to it. Let's just come back to Ingrid's ideology, because first of all, I've said it's a lot of claptrap, and that's because there is no practical solution to implement any of it. So whilst I agree the rich-poor poverty gap should be absolutely reduced, you have to find a methodology to do that. Now, if you look at capping somebody to £10 million, when I built my business, it probably took me 15 years to make £10 million. I worked like fury to achieve that. If 10 million was the cap, at that time, I was employed about 50 people. Where would have been the motivation to carry on, drive forward, and to employ 12,000 people and to grow a huge amount of wealth for those individuals who did very, very well out of the salaries I paid them, and some people became rich in their own right? Where would have been my motivation to sacrifice a huge part of my life for the success and the wealth that I created?
Professor Robeyns, very brief answer to that, and then we've got to move on, I'm afraid.
So the assumption is always that we're only motivated by extrinsic rewards, money, but there are large groups of professionals, including in the public sector, including academics, but also all the people working for the NHS, who work very long hours, always put in extra hours for intrinsic motivation. So
Understood.
I just think it is underplaying the intrinsic motivation of entrepreneurs that after a certain limit, they would no longer be willing to contribute to the common good.
Forgive me interrupting you, we have other things to go to. We've only begun the debate, but it's a fascinating one, and I'm grateful for you both agreeing to do it. Professor Ingrid Robeyns, whose book is called Limitarianism, The Case Against Extreme Wealth. John Caudwell, who was not too polite about the idea, but engaged with the principles. Thank you for joining us.